Hello and welcome everyone to our fourth and final event in the Photography is series. For these events, Foam Photography Museum Amsterdam has joined forces with the an Amsterdam-based platform and laboratory focused on internet and digital culture, to explore how the internet has reshaped photography. My name is Winke Wiegersma. I work as a digital curator and researcher and will be your host tonight on behalf of Foam.
And I'm Margarita Osipian. I'm part of the where I work mainly on programming and research. We're really excited to welcome all of you on our live stream tonight. You'll be seeing me and Vinka tonight, in addition to our guests who are here with us. But we couldn't do this event without some people who are hiding out behind the scenes here. Our technician Marco, who's running our live stream, and Lillian Stoke, who's running the chat, but also developed this program together with me and Vinka. Lillian will be sharing links throughout the program and bringing all of your questions to us via the chat. So for those of you who have not been on our live stream before, just wanted to share a few little tips. You can chat with each other and also send messages and questions to us via the chat that's on the right side of the screen. You can also use the emotes button to share any emotions that you have, any feelings as talks are going on. And that's a little tiny tab that's at the bottom of the live stream. And you can also watch the live stream with different video resolutions, such as a low res option, which shows a screenshot every 15 seconds, or an audio only mode, or even in text only mode. You can also turn on captions by pressing the three dots at the bottom of the screen. And you might have also noticed that as you watch, all the data that is being sent and received is actually being calculated in the top right corner as a way to make you think a little bit more about the energy resources of digital platforms. So if you kind of toggle between different video resolutions or different view modes, you'll notice that the amount of data that's being uploaded and downloaded will also decrease and increase. But now, with all of those practical details out of the way, I want to get back to tonight's event. So this series departs from the question, what even is photography nowadays? In a rapidly changing context, it seems futile to want to pin the photographic medium down to one definition. Instead, what photography is, we collectively want to explore the different possible endings to this sentence, which we're actually going to do together at the end of this event, in order to better understand the multitude of manifestations of this medium and to speculate what might come next in a myriad of possible futures. In the coming hour, we have an exciting selection of speakers lined up in a fast-paced format to quickly bring you up to speed on the ideas and inspiration behind this series.
Traditionally, the photographic medium has held a certain claim on the truth. From its invention, a photo was seen as the sort of ultimate document of reality. And even though early on manipulation and framing became an integral part of the medium, this idea of capturing reality proved pretty resilient. However, also early on, the medium proved a fruitful technology to venture into the surreal. So surrealist artists like Man Ray, Dora Maar, and Greta Stern, to name just a few, used double exposures, montage, and distortion to create these uncanny representations of dreams, memories, and the subconscious. Photos that actually aesthetically are somewhat similar to the style of AI-generated images that we see nowadays. Fueled by digital technologies, the possibilities to edit, alter, and construct images grew exponentially over the years and also embedded itself within internet cultures. Manipulating, appropriating, and even generating visual material is very much part of the language of the internet, and diverging more and more from any original meaning or reality. And this led us to wonder what is the impact of such imagery that is increasingly harder to connect to something that exists in the world.
So in this image-saturated world that Vinka is referring to, where real images can win an AI award, we saw that with this image of a flamingo, and fake images are believed to be true. How is the photographic medium surpassing our sense of reality? And how is the medium going beyond its own reality, its traditional two-dimensional forms? During this final event of the series, we'll explore the variety of photographic expressions that emerge from the internet, embracing the changing medium in all its weirdness and surreality. And for this final event, we wanted to deviate from the format that we've been using for previous events in the series and actually go back to a fast-paced format that we've been doing with the HUM for since its inception. And in this format, each speaker presents for 5 minutes, making use of 20 slides that auto-advance every 15 seconds. So it goes quite fast. It's a lot of fun. And after each talk, we're going to have a short 5-minute Q&A with the audience to further expand on what was discussed. And we chose this format because we wanted to take a really kind of fast-paced scroll through all these surreal qualities, the weirdness, and actually, in a way, looking at how fast these things are changing with in relation to developing technologies, and looking at what the internet has to offer through the lens of photography. So now to get started, we're really excited to have our first guest of the evening, Silvia Daldoso, multidisciplinary artist and researcher of digital technologies and web subcultures. Silvia is also a co-founder of ClusterDuck, an art collective that works across research, design, and transmedia. She's going to lead us on a speculative journey into just how weird our future might become. Welcome, Silvia, and let's get your presentation started. Oh, did we lose her? Okay, give us 1 second. I think Sylvia's just restarting. Marco, I also hear an echo. There she's back.
Can you hear me? Sorry. Cool. This was the intro of one of the videos where I like to use core and Adam Curtis assemblage style to try to make sense of the massive amount of data that surround us. Lately, everything is getting exponentially faster for no reasons, also thanks to the graphic processing unit by NVIDIA, where almost all the world's AI software are running. Curiously enough, the more GPUs and multimodal AI is evolving, the more this meme becomes violent. I'm wondering if there is any explanation to this. For sure, NVIDIA chips and the semiconductor industry is at the core of the escalating conflict between US and China, with TSMC fabs in Taiwan at the center of the dispute. In the meanwhile, weird generative AI has become such a recognizable aesthetics that it can be now simulated in real life. But in truth, AI is influencing us on a deeper level. In our increasingly algorithmic society, we are adapting to interpret multiple levels of meanings simultaneously in order to survive. As theorist Joanna Zielinska suggests, photography, intended as the perception machine, is now an aggregate, assemblage, or ensemble of the technical, the corporeal, and the social. We do not easily relate to single separate objects. Instead, we are more inclined to perceive multiple systems of objects, events, and feelings. How does the assemblage take place? With ClusterDuck, we actually spent the last 7 years attempting to assemble a map of the whole internet meme sphere. We followed a bivariable pathos-formal methodology at the beginning. Then we became crazy, and then we became a node on a network for other art internet meme experts. Memes, like the events we are living through, are always plural. They should be perceived in a context, and they can be interpreted in clusters and by forming clusters of people. Today, photos of real objects created by AI are meme images, a synthesis of data which are mainly shitposting randomly reprocessed through a sort of stochastic lottery. At ClusterDuck, we decided to address this loss of meaning through remediation with a series of prints highlighting the polychrysed state we are currently experiencing. In different fields, we use AI to create data loss translations where text full of meaning become visual nonsense. This washed portrait, for example, use phrases or prompts describing a past trauma and becoming just colorful tears of the Wojak. Meanwhile, thousands of underpaid co-workers, mostly from the Global South, are working hard to correct biases, label dataset content, and moderate it. As actual foundational AI is requiring a ton of human labor, AI scientists are thinking to resolve this issue with embedded knowledge, teaching AI to see without relying on initial datasets. It's a weird present that requires all of our participation. On that note, I would like to conclude with this post pinned on Luigi Mangione X account and the sentence, assemble, aggregate, depose.
Thank you, Sylvia.
Thank you.
For those of you who are in the chat, feel free to send any questions there, and Lillian will pass them over to us. Actually, maybe we can start with your last post, the one of Luigi Mangione. Of course, it's also the thing that's sort of saturating a lot of our internet spheres right now. Luigi was the suspect in the shooting of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. And then as soon as his identity was revealed, people online really began digging into his LinkedIn profile, his Twitter, Goodreads profiles, and all these different memes followed. And we were wondering if, whether you think Luigi actually orchestrated his actions with the intention of making them resonate so strongly within online culture.
For sure, he knew a lot about it, and you could actually see there is a lot of memetic content about this situation with Luigi Mangione. The fact that, for example, he's Italian is one of them. I'm saying this because I'm Italian as well. The Monopoly money, the ghost gun. Actually, you can see that he's from his generation, of course. But I don't know, there is also a lot of things where you cannot really get, did he knew, did he not know, did he... there are a lot of speculations at the moment. Everyone is doing this in their head as well, but yeah, there is a lot of memetic potential to the happening, and also a lot of value to it. A lot of people responded pretty heavily on this. You could actually see from the post from the company, the insurance company, a lot of smile reaction, really a lot of it. And now we live in a situation in which you would, on X especially, you actually don't know if you are talking with a bot or not. In my presentation on one of the last slides, you could see a click fab, which is, the fabs where you can actually pay money to create actions that seems humans but which are not. And of course, in the next few days, we will see a lot of these actors being involved in Mangione debates, for sure. But the first reaction from the people, that it was a long time that I couldn't see something so convinced and spontaneous and participate. And this is, of course, an index of the very hard situation in which people are from related to the health insurance in US.
Definitely. Yeah, I think it really, like you said, it's really kind of coalesced at the specific moment in time as well. And I want to go back to the project that you were showing, the cluster duck research that you were doing, and what was like maybe one of your kind of most surreal experiences, like working on this on that project.
During when we started with the detective wall, the very big installation that is now in Copenhagen at the moment, we actually didn't realize how could it grow. Then when COVID happened, we realized how people really needed to talk loud about everything that they are living on the internet, because usually on the internet you are alone and you think alone, and you are interacting with a lot of people, but in a kind of mediated way, while we don't have, like in this kind of events like here, we have the possibility to really exchange ideas. And this is what we try to do. Like, okay, the most strange one, I don't know, there are a lot of weird things from, living into very bad hostels, because at the beginning we had a lot of travels as well. We talked with a lot of people. Maybe at Omoluk Festival, I found myself in a situation where a lot of people were pro-Kakistan alt-right members, but we kind of had a very useful conversation with them, and this actually taught me how interesting is to try to exit from our bubble, especially in real life, because in the end people always kind of try find a way to agree or at least understand each other, why on the internet is very hard to do that.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. Thanks for hosting me.
Our second guest tonight is media artist Francesco Lozano, otherwise known as Camo, who's been reimagining the concept of the screenshot in an analog form with his project Smartphone Camera Obscura. Welcome, Camo. Let us know when you're ready to start.
Yo, yeah, I think I'm ready.
Great.
So, my name is Cam, and today I would like to talk for 5 minutes about screenshots. And in the slides here, there are some watercolors from a series of drawings titled Smartphone Camera Obscura. And all these drawings involve a process similar to the one that historically have been used to paint landscape, let's say from 16th century onward, where artists were like shut in dark cabinet with a small pinhole on the wall, and with the light pouring on the opposite side of the room, a projected image that was then traced, resulting in super realistic paintings. That is eventually also the technology behind photography. And I'm doing the same, but with smartphones, hiding under a blanket to block out the light and tracing the screen of my phone And in a way, it's like a way of taking analog screenshots, tracing the icons, the button, and all this pop-up notification that jumps in. And this idea of using like the camera obscura to take screenshot made me really think about screenshot as a digital landscape that is a super intimate and personal landscape shaped by cookies and algorithmic recommendations and creepy ads of something that you were talking about at dinner, but also at the same time also some mega algorithmic. I don't know, like so it's not just a landscape, but it's also a self-portrait, no? So there is also this idea of the screenshot as a gesture, as a moment to reconstruct daily lives. And so also today, for example, I was advertising this talk on Instagram, and I did a screen recording, like starting from a reel of a bird, and then going to my browser, landing on a super random page about a prehistoric whale, and then swiping to the website. No, like supernatural, but it took me 4 times to manage to do it. And because maybe this fact that in photography you usually have a subject that is taking the picture and an object behind the camera that is being portrayed. But with screenshot, we are a bit more scattered all around, no? Like all over the place in the content and in the UI, in the notification. Like it's a bit more of an esoteric technology in which we are immersed. And that lets me to asking, okay, but who's actually taking the screenshot? No, like what is the machine that is taking the screenshot? Because in the description of the event we wrote, yeah, a screenshot, like a picture taken without camera. But I think it's actually the other way around. It's like a screenshot, a photo taken by thousands of different machines at the same time, because there is, I don't know, the operative system of the phone and the button and the display and all these things are like participating in a technical collage in a way. And if in the ancient camera obscura we had like artists and their assistants hidden in this small room tracing the picture, one starts to wonder, okay, but who the fuck is taking this picture with the screenshot? No, like who's together with me tonight, rendering this funny, silly picture on the screen for me to trace? And in a way, it's also a way to think about the multitude of people that are around a screenshot, both the actor present in the screenshot itself, but also the people that designed and that wrote the software to take it. And I don't know, like there are a lot of presence, no? A lot of different ghosts haunting the user interface and stuff like that. And I would like maybe to quote or like to version a quote from Libby Mars and Tiger Ding Soon from an essay called The Lore Zone. And they say something like screenshot circulates and gets stored in a way that incorporate personal narrative as documentation, no? Like there is something personal in Instagram stories, combining textuality of it, but also with element of oral storytelling. And I think this is, I don't know, like a crazy value added to this photograph that is also painting, that is also performance, that is also some kind of compound technical object. And I really like it. So yeah, I hope this was surreal enough. To me, it is a bit. Okay, thank you. Ta-ta.
Thank you so much for that. I think definitely bordering on the surreal, or at least in a way I see how you talk about screenshot. It kind of brings in this whole history of photography boiled down to, sort of absorbed into the machine itself. Yeah. I recently went through a folder of screenshots and I was surprised how personal they are. They gave me an overview, a historic overview of all the things that occupied my mind over time. Although I do realize that maybe I'm quite unique with storing them, because usually they're seen as sort of throwaways, right? we capture something that draws our attention for a certain reason until our desktops fill up, and then we usually throw them away without even second guessing. I was wondering, do you see your work by then tracing them and painting them or drawing them? Do you see your work as giving more value to the screenshot itself, transforming it into an analog form?
But in a way, I think yes, because it resonates also with this archival kind of practices. No, then I'm not sure. I think my practice of drawing them is more a way to meditate on it, or to tune in with these different forces that are around the screenshot more than screening it. Also because I don't know, like I work as a web developer and designer, and I'm having, I don't know, I need to work every day with UI and stuff like that, and sometimes I get a bit I don't know, bored about it. So this was also for me a way to I don't know, to make peace with that. to came at a meeting point with boring UIs that are all every I don't know, they are super similar, and then to do something different in a way. This I would say. On the other hand, in all these personal things in the screenshot, there is also so much violence sometimes. I don't know, I think, for example, all this screenshot of chats, of personal chats that are shared in the internet, and if I don't know, at some point I told my friend, please stop sending me screenshot of chat you're having with other people, because I don't want to participate in this gesture, no? Like, it's so violent and so...
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's
a way
this level
to
of...
detach from that, no? Like, to try and come to terms with that.
And it's a level of... once you post something or you share something online, it's out of your control, whoever replicates it or shares it further. There's that possibility now. I'm thinking on another note, thinking about the photographic camera, the lens is facing out into the world in some form. The screenshot obviously is capturing within the display. You already mentioned it in your presentation a bit, but could you elaborate on what world is it showing to us? You were talking about multitudes, but could you say something about that?
Yeah, I have two things about that, maybe. One is this ever-changing and transforming digital feed that is always, I don't know, like always flowing, no? Like Greek people were saying you don't bathe in the same feed twice, or something like that. There is something there, like it's a really ever-flowing river on one hand, and on the other hand, it's also something that is I don't know. I think it's something like a collage, no? Because there are, I don't know, like there are several actors at play here, like the one of the UI, the one of the contents, the one of the, I don't know, the notification and the bubble here. Like, this is there are so many different things playing, and it's funny when you say, like, in the real camera, so-called, there is a world outside, but also here there is a world, because, for example, there is this eerie sensation when you're screen sharing in Zoom, for example, no, where you are like you're sharing your screen, but all the interface from Zoom is hidden. No, like, and the other people don't see it. And then, for example, during work, I have to use Slack, And when you share your screen in Slack, all the interface of Slack is there. Like, like there are different layers, and it's not that a screen is just a flat image that you're, I don't know, like it's not an image without perspective, no? Like it's more deep than that. There are different layers, and this to me is super interesting because all the parts of the screen are somehow rendered or drawn by a different entity, like by a different piece of software. And I like to think that this piece of software have been written by people. And I like to think that everyone had their own, I don't know, their own life or their way to doing it. And somehow we managed to still have a more or less coherent outcome, or like, let's say, yeah, coherent, meaning that we don't see just cut out stuff and things one on top of the other. I don't know, it's really interesting. One thing I just remember, there is this amazing video by Camilla Roth titled Gross Fatigue. I think, I don't know, it's like desktop documentary or these things that it's amazing. And it's really just 15 minutes of navigating through the desktop as an archive, with a lot of things happening simultaneously. I think this video actually prepared net art genre.
We can, if you share the link later with us.
I think that is the kind of landscape I imagine.
Yeah.
Of course.
If you share the link later, we can share it with our viewers at home. Thank you so much for your insightful words and presentation, flowing slowly into the third guest of the evening. I want to welcome Jason Kubler to the screen. Previously editor-in-chief of Motherboard and co-founder of 404 Media, Jason, hi, is joining us to talk about the rise of AI slop, the low quality and unwanted AI-generated content that is currently flooding the internet and its platforms. Jason, whenever you're ready.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. So as mentioned, I'm a journalist with 404 Media, and I've been pretty obsessed with how AI slop has taken over Facebook in particular over the last year. I've done a number of stories about it, and I'm going to take you through how I did this reporting and how it's changing the platform. So I call this the rise of Shrimp Jesus and the zombie internet. This all started with this guy who is Michael Jones. He is a chainsaw artist from the United Kingdom. This is a real photo that you're seeing. He documents his process. He takes like big logs and makes sculptures of your dog. And he gets like tens of thousands of likes on Facebook for it. One day I noticed these images, and these are AI copies of Michael's work. You can see that the dogs are different in each image and the people are different in each image. Here's another type of AI spam I saw on Facebook where you have this real image on the left and then dozens of clones of this on the right. So at first we were seeing these like very popular memes that were just spreading throughout Facebook. And they started with these real images that had been run through an image-to-image AI generator. And basically they looked sort of real, but something was very off. Like if you zoomed in, you saw it. And we saw the rise of all of these Facebook groups and pages that were getting millions of likes, honestly, using this tactic. So this is a graph of the rise of one of these specific pages. And I documented this for maybe like a few months. And then things started getting really weird from there. So one day we started to see Shrimp Jesus, who should pop up in a minute. This is basically an image of Jesus with the arms of shrimp and millions of likes on these pictures. So these are just like some examples of the form. Here you have a large-chested woman with a Jesus made out of like recycled bottles. And the big question for me is like, are the people interacting with this real? And so I went through all of these comments. Here you have an image of a deck that has been run through an AI image generator, and then tons of comments of people arguing about whether that deck is up to code. And so you had like these people on Facebook arguing back and forth about things that are not real. And so many of them are real people who are fighting over whether AI images are real. So I was very interested in like where does it come from, who's doing it, and why. I spent a lot of time looking for the communities of people making this because it has to come from somewhere. And then one day I found a YouTube channel that was explaining how to do this. So there's essentially a whole subculture of hustle bros, more or less, in India, the Philippines, Vietnam, and elsewhere. And they are teaching people how to make this content. On YouTube in particular, they're getting thousands and thousands of views, comments, etc. And they are essentially teaching people how to use Bing Image Generator, which is a free AI image generator. You see, like they're essentially doing teaching modules, more or less. So if you zoom in here, they're saying, here's the type of content that you can make and how to post it on Facebook. It got so interesting that I actually found a person in rural India who had made 20 different Facebook accounts and had written the usernames and passwords for all of his accounts in a notebook. And then he had all of these little copy paste prompts that he was using. A lot of the surreal nature of this is coming from people using voice to text like translation. And so they're speaking in Hindi, translating it to English, and then they're running it through Bing Image Generator, which is creating these like really surreal and weird images that people are posting. I learned through these videos that Facebook itself is actually paying these creators to make this content through a program called the image, or it's called the, I had it up, but the Creators Program Bonus Beta. And so for like a certain number of engagement, they get money. And then they sort of share how much money they're making doing this. In some cases, it's like $400 for an image. In other cases, it's just a few dollars per image. You'd think that Facebook would be worried by this, but this is an excerpt from a shareholders call the other day. And Mark Zuckerberg said that it has increased the amount of engagement on Facebook and Instagram, and that they are going to continue monetizing this. So it's not going away anytime soon, but that's a very quick whirlwind view of how I did this reporting and where it came from. I know that was a lot. I clearly didn't talk fast enough.
Thank you, Jason. Lillian will share a link to your piece that you wrote about this, so people can also get a bit of a deeper dive into this world of AI slop. When we were sort of reading up on some of the stuff you've written about this and some interviews you've done, you were talking about how AI slop has created this kind of like zombie internet, where, as you put it, a mix of bots, humans, and accounts that were once humans but aren't anymore, mixed together to form a disastrous website where there's little social connection at all. And I was just thinking, like, how can we escape the rise of this AI slop? Is it a matter of like kind of jumping from one platform to the next? Although I think many people have already left Facebook. Or is it about kind of like creating smaller communities online? But do you see like a kind of escape hatch to what seems like this sort of endless accumulation of this kind of content?
Yeah, I focused on Facebook because it's the most mature of the social media platforms. It's the oldest one, and it's also kind of fallen into disrepair, where there's this very advanced spam ecosystem and market. And I think it's almost like looking into the past at this old platform and then looking into the future where other platforms could go down this path. Like we've seen AI slop take over Instagram. I've seen some on LinkedIn. It's like anywhere on the internet. We're seeing this type of spam. I think that we're also seeing a lot of people sort of revert to things like group texts. And for us personally, like at 404 Media, we're trying to reach our audience through email directly and really just trying to form like a one-to-one connection with our audience rather than playing the social media slot machine, because really like discoverability on the internet is getting very difficult because the scale at which this stuff is being posted is something that's very hard to fight against. And a lot of them are sort of using, they're like spamming keywords into these things. So they perform very well in search algorithms and social media algorithms. Despite all of that, I don't think that people like this. And so I think that, you know, you do see a lot like sort of smaller communities of people sharing content amongst themselves or sharing, you know, a more human connection. And I think that that process will continue to evolve. And I'm actually quite optimistic about the future of the internet because people are rejecting this, I think.
It's good to have a little bit of optimism, I think. So many of us get into this kind of dark space when thinking about this. Yeah, I agree with you. I think there is like kind of a rejection on the smaller scale of this kind of content. But like you said, you know, Facebook still continues to have this kind of program, which is also feels very absurd in a way. But
yeah, I mean, the spam ecosystems are very mature. And that was something that I learned while I was doing this. It's like Facebook is essentially incentivizing people in the global south to post as much content as possible. And it's not just AI generated content. There's a lot of people whose entire business model, and by business model, I mean, these are just, you know, random people are going onto Chinese social media and copy pasting and just like posting reels from one platform to another because the copyright law, like the copyright detection system, isn't grabbing things from the Chinese internet, more or less. And I think that sort of dynamic is, I don't know, it's very like imperialist of these big tech companies, and they're sort of enlisting the masses on the internet to do this very like low paid like rote work for them, more or less. And I think that that's something that is not focused on enough.
Yeah, kind of going back to the focus on photographic images, like the ones that you talk about in your piece about AI slop on Facebook, and they seem to be just generated as a way to make money, like we just talked about, by getting enough likes on them. But I was thinking about like what kind of impact this could have on photographic image generation. Because what it feels like will start happening is that if AI tools are then being fed these kinds of slop images, and then they kind of generate them out, and then it's this kind of endless cycle of like the things sort of start to really deteriorate in that way. Yeah, I was wondering if you sort of went in that thought process a little bit, like in terms of what impact will it have on the kind of photographic ecosystem as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the big debates in AI right now is whether, you know, these large language models are going to run out of content to train on, whether some of these copyright lawsuits we've seen in the United States are going to be successful. And then also the idea of AI that essentially eats itself by training on the output, the sort of faulty outputs that it has already generated. And I think, I mean, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that very soon, like AI generated spam is going to outpace human generated content on the internet. It's just the ability to generate thousands and thousands and thousands of images in a matter of seconds is, it's like human beings are very good at creating a lot of stuff and writing a lot of stuff and taking photographs and doing amazing art. They're not as good at the sheer scale that is done with AI. And it's like, you know, we write articles for a living at 404 Media. We have found that our articles within minutes of them being published are being ingested by AI systems and are being kind of like repurposed on these spam websites that are publishing 1,000 articles a day. And that there's thousands of these sites that are publishing thousands of articles a day. And I think that very quickly it's going to sort of outpace the human internet. And so I do really think that one of the biggest threats of AI right now is this discoverability on the internet problem, because right now we're used to Googling for something or scrolling our social media feeds and being able to find what we're looking for. And I think that is going to go away. I think that it's going to go away, not just because things are being spammed, but also because these tech companies have so much money invested in ensuring that AI is adopted by the masses, even though right now it still feels like a pretty niche. Like the people who are using AI and saying that it's making their lives better, it's not that many people, in my opinion. But yeah, and I of course worry about what will happen to artists, what will happen to writers, what will happen to films, and that sort of thing. But at the same time, I think that there is a demand for human created work, and I think that we have gone out of our way as a publication to say, we are human beings, here we are, here's our process, here's how we do it. And I think that unfortunately artists sort of across the board might have to do a little bit more of that, just being like, here is my process, please support me because I am a human being using my brain and my body to make what I make.
Yeah. Definitely. Thank you so much, Jason. And we'll we'll definitely keep reading the content that you're creating. It's definitely much better than I think the slop that's going around. So I encourage everyone to also go on 404 Media and take a read of the kinds of well-researched articles that are being written by Jason and his team. So our next guest is Sarah Amrani, who's a visual artist based in Rotterdam with an ongoing fascination for beauty standards, female cultural identity, and its representation. Sarah's going to be joining us to speak about the artificiality of beauty and how the online visual world is surpassing reality in terms of the female body and identity. Welcome, Sarah. Let us know when you're ready to start.
Yeah, I'm ready. Yes. So I will talk about my ongoing visual project called Terror of Beauty, which is now exhibited at Foam. In this project, I explore the effects of the online digital world and modern technologies such as AI on the experience of female identity and how it shapes our perception of beauty. And I focus on the transformation of the face in the digital space. I analyze the blurring of boundaries between the physical and virtual of beauty and the impact on self-perception. My starting point for this project was my fascination with online hijab makeup tutorials. And back then when I started, this was something quite niche and not yet part of the mainstream beauty and fashion scene. And I was particularly interested in how the hijab operates visually. Framing the face, emphasizing the face that is beautified extensively in these videos, and exposing the beauty standards that are at work here. And in these beauty vlogs, the face becomes hyper-realistic, a virtual representation, a kind of beauty mask, so to speak. I then also started to look into online beauty tools, which are designed especially to give you advice on how to enhance your beauty. For example, this website called AnnaFace, it would calculate your beauty and give you a beauty score. And there are now a lot of apps based on this idea. These online technologies and social media platforms contribute to the cultural production of unrealistic, hyper-realistic beauty ideals, influencing our perception and behavior towards beauty. And driven by the fascination with the hijab, with the visual language of the hijab in the digital context, I began to explore the hijab in relation to beauty standards and digital technologies. By placing the hijab within the context of AI-driven beauty filters and virtual identities, I aim to explore different perspectives and open a broader dialogue about the impact of technologies such as AI on different cultural identities and modern beauty standards. And part of my research approach is deconstruction, where the fragmentation symbolizes the breakdown of beauty and identity in the digital age. Because we are constantly inventing and presenting new versions of ourselves. And this highlights, I think, the fluid nature of these beauty standards in a digital environment. The face is complete from one angle, appears complete from one angle, but changes when viewed from another. And this emphasizes how technologies shape our perception of self-image and beauty. In the digital space, the hijab adopts new forms of expression. which illustrates how technology can transform cultural symbols. Another cultural symbol I'm really interested in that becomes transformed in the digital space, which is also part of this project, is the use of Amazigh face filters. Through digital platforms such as TikTok and AI-driven beauty face filters, these traditional symbols are rediscovered and integrated into contemporary forms of self-expression. Online, there's now this whole new generation reconnecting with their roots in the digital space. And this raises questions about the role of technology in redefining cultural identities. So on one hand, these new technologies such as AI can create new and diverse forms of online self-representation and expression. But on the other hand, they also reinforce existing stereotypes and beauty norms. We are constantly confronted with unrealistic beauty ideals through social media. And now with AI, I think it's essential to remain critically aware of how these technologies shape our perception of beauty and identity. AI algorithms analyze facial features and provide personal beauty advice. Disguised as a tool, this contributes to the pressure to meet certain standards. AI-based tools can reinforce unrealistic beauty ideals and sometimes create a distorted self-image. For example, last month, TikTok announced new restrictions for under 18-year-old users to be blocked from this filter called so-called glow-up type filter, because it would distort their appearance a bit too realistically. And these virtual images reflect not only personal preferences, but also broader cultural norms, because I want to conclude with that it's also important to be aware of the bias in the AI algorithms and the beauty filters, because these are predominantly developed in the West, which results in AI-driven beauty ideals that may favor certain cultural norms over others, and therefore potentially limiting diversity in beauty perspectives.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for your presentation. I want to immediately jump on the last comment that you made, because, of course, looking at history, enhancing your appearance is very common practice, for, in the whole of human history. But of course, very influenced based on one's cultural or historical context. And could you elaborate a bit more on, I think it resonates with your last comment, how is this current sort of technology-driven beauty standard different to this, or different to enhancing one's appearance based on a cultural context?
I think these technologies become now even more intertwined with our daily lives. So, as I said, the boundary between what's if you see those early filters, you obviously also have the filters that are used to be like funny or a little bit cartoonesque, or you could really see when something was a filter or not. And I think because these technologies are so much developing, the boundary becomes really blurred, and they even become so realistic that it's a bit like, you can't really tell the difference anymore between what's a virtual reality or the authentic reality.
Yeah, exactly. And in that case, kind of blurring this line. Relating to obviously to the topic of this event, the surrealness. How do you then think that these practices of the vloggers that you started the project with, looking at these vloggers and influencers, how are they then changing that our sense of reality in relation to our beauty?
The vloggers, that's a good question. Yeah, I've been actually doing a lot of conversations with ChatGPT on this topic as well, as a sort of new type of AI vlogger, and also to ask to generate images based on this beauty ideal that is presented online and on this modern-based beauty ideal. And ChatGPT actually really generates this is the same kind of images. It really reproduces the same kind of beauty ideal, which I think is really interesting because when you ask ChatGPT if it's biased, then it will say yes. But then if you ask to generate another image, it will reproduce the same, only if you give other, like, if you say, okay, a not Western beauty standard, then it will generate something different.
But obviously also based on a pretty limited conception of what that then is, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's kind of repeating, the bias that it's ingrained with. Maybe as a last question, you mentioned this in your presentation. It's also written in the essay that accompanies your exhibition, where these traditional cultural symbols, you mentioned the hijab, the Amazigh tattoos, there is this duality. On the one hand, technology narrows this cultural identity, where it's very much Western oriented or repeating those standards. But on the other hand, technology also expands and opens up space for more diverse beauty ideals. How do you relate to this, and which examples did you come across? Or
yeah, so I'm really interested in that duality. So at one hand, it creates new possibilities of self-expression in the digital space. On the other hand, it reproduces a lot of the same beauty image. Sorry, what did you?
Just if you had any more, if you came across any examples of how this technology also expands, like to end on a more, maybe slightly more positive note, how it can create space for more diverse expressions of beauty. Yeah, so I've been really focused on the use of the Amazigh filters, but I think that's really interesting because it's a tradition that's more common with an older generation, and it's actually been really disappearing from that culture, because the younger generation doesn't, because they are actual tattoos, so they don't use them in the same way. So to see how people create now online filters of these traditional symbols, and then really in a way to reconnect, because I think there's a really big group of young people reconnecting with their roots in these kind of times. I think that's really interesting, because it's such a contradiction as well of this, how the traditional tattoo is used in the older generation, and how this is now completely redefined in the digital space. Yeah, no, exactly. And let's hope that the technologies can keep opening up for these kind of knowledge exchanges as well. Thank you so much, Sarah, for taking us through your work, and make sure for everyone at home, make sure to visit the exhibition at Foam, which opened last week. Moving on to our final guest of the evening is Linda Dunia Rebais, an artist, designer, and writer based in Dakar, Senegal, who is mainly interested in the philosophical and environmental implications of techno-capitalism. She will be joining us to speak about a range of things, including her use of artificial intelligence to create speculative archives. I'm just going to hand over the mic to you, Linda, so whenever you're ready.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's almost midnight, so I'm going to try to keep time. So what we're seeing is kind of the question that is central to my practice, especially looking at artificial intelligence and kind of the different places that different people have with regards to access to this technology. This is a little picture of me and where I'm from, how much the neighborhood has changed over time. But there's a sort of claim that I try to make with my practice is that whatever that place is that you're from it matters. And so that's kind of so what is an image is a question that I've been asking myself more and more the more I use AI, because it's sort of come to mean data in a lot of ways. The craft of making a data set actually informs how the image is composited in the end. And obviously that's the work of like scientists and engineers doing this work. But it's all in this this quest of seeing better or seeing more. But I think seeing is like seeing in photography in general is a very subjective experience. There's always a perspective that's betrayed in how we see things, and therefore how we build data sets, context, imaginaries, values. And one of the things that I want to do is that I don't want to settle for sort of the patchy myth of reality that AI feeds back to me in the absence of knowing or seeing my context. And it's interesting, I'm from Africa, so it's a forgotten continent, but it's incidentally at like the start and the end of the value chain for AI. So from the natural resources that I mined to the tech, the e-waste that's dumped. And yet AI doesn't seem to know much about it. A lot of the labor that's being done for content moderation actually is from the global south, including Africa. But if you prompt for any African city, what you'll get is like dirt roads and these like ruins, which look nothing like what these places actually are that you prompt for. So these are prompts for my city, Dakar, that just is unseen by these models and therefore unknown. And then you dig into the data set in order to find out how come the models don't know very well the cities. And then you find out that, at least from my perspective, a lot of the images that are available in public archives are actually colonial images as well as military images. And so there's no images from the perspective of people themselves. And that's why my work is about creating archives from a like first person standpoint, I guess. These are very niche data sets that kind of are a resistance against like being unseen and being unconsidered and therefore unknown. They're speculative because they use in part AI, and it's as a way is essentially to answer the question of if AI is how we now see the world and how we increasingly see the world, including the slop that it provides us, then what's actually missing from how it's trained. So for me, AI is an instrument for seeing as well as assessing how well we can see, because the results and the synthesis, the images that are synthesized by the model actually betray how the model understands specific places and certain people. And so this is a project that I'm currently working on called Blur Theory, which is investigating how a person sees their own city, my own city of Dakar. And it uses a kind of double exposure technique where I take actual pictures of my city while walking or in a car or just in motion in general, which is how most of us experience cities. We don't like stand and gaze at the places we're from. You're just walking around, right? And then I use images that are synthesized by AI on the particular location that I have my pictures taken. And then I kind of have this like Frankenstein of the two images. And what ends up happening is that it's like I'm brute forcing my perspective into a perspective of reality that's absolutely false, but is increasingly taking over sort of collective consciousness. So you have this continent that's like generally unknown, generally misrepresented by the colonial project, generally missing from AI models today. And it's been, I think, over time, the same fight of consistently just kind of refusing the idea that we are what we appear to be in archives, and whether they're analog or online. And essentially brute forcing like a first person perspective that is more intimate and in my opinion a little bit more accurate.
Wow, thank you so much, Linda. Also for joining us so late in the evening. You did a really great job in this really fast speed presentation, so we really appreciate it. Yeah, I was thinking about just with the last project that you shared about this, like you're talking about like kind of brute forcing your own kind of reality into it. And of course, in the way that you're approaching it now with your artistic project, it's, at least what I understand from it, it's a bit of, like on a smaller scale. And I'm wondering if you're also interested in this kind of like mass injecting these realities back into the data sets that AI systems are using, or are you much more focused on this on this kind of micro level that I also think is really powerful and important?
Yeah, I actually think that if AI is going to be interesting, not successful, I don't have an opinion on that, but if it's going to be interesting, it has to be small, it has to be very contextual, and it has to be sort of like very small, intimate models, essentially, that, again, like one of the things that I care about is the dissemination of the ways to be known and the ways to be seen, and that is a new way to do that. Right, if you think about the camera, it's gone from like a very expensive like piece of machinery to something that just comes up with like the cheapest smartphone. Everyone can take pictures. I think everyone should be able to train their own AI models in order to have like a more interesting depiction of like the actual and the true diversity of like humanity. Because otherwise you kind of have this like one perspective that is actually an engineering perspective. It's not an artistic or just a generally like average perspective on how we should see the world. So when I gather data sets, I'm working in the scale of thousands of images, but I know there are projects that are working in like a much bigger scale, and then the question always remains like, if the work of actually contributing data is labor now, it should be considered as labor and should be recognized and remunerated as such. And so there's always this very like this weird tension of like, if the content is misrepresented by AI, should we just give as much data for free as we can? And then it becomes a fraud, kind of like a bit of a tension. Like, no, we shouldn't, obviously. Like, but then if we don't, then we continue to be unseen and unknown. So it's an interesting time at the moment.
Definitely, it's like this kind of this tension. But I do feel like sort of rejecting the kind of massive. The large scale world of AI and focusing on this smaller scale is kind of a way to get away from that, especially if it seems like from Jason's presentation that the massive scale is just going to be sort of this accumulation of AI slop. But yeah, I agree with you. I think this tension is
a real thing.
One, you didn't mention this project, but when we kind of when we were looking at your work, the project that we sort of entered your work in on was this multi-chapter project called Once Upon a Garden. And in that project, you depart from this question, what is worth remembering? And you're creating this kind of speculative archive of critically endangered plant species of West Africa, which little to no known records there are little to no records are known. And we're just wondering, in light of what you shared of the kind of motivations behind your work, what was the motivation behind creating this Once Upon a Garden project?
Yeah, it started as a very kind of simple question. And all my work is very mundane, I think. Like, it's about mundane things and people and environments. But what I wanted to find out what flowers my grandmother grew up seeing. And I figured that I could get an answer, that I would be able to get an answer with a simple web search. And then I realized it was incredibly difficult to actually find a visual answer to my question. I could find like names of species, or maybe herbarium records, but nothing actually like a picture that I could like hang on to. And that's what's prompted this idea of just like building speculative archives, which is a composite, all AI is composite, but this is at the data level, actually compositing like images, compositing a data set based on images we have, and then images we don't have and synthesizing those based on those we have. And so you have this like data set for this project that starts with like actual pictures of flowers that I've taken around my travels in Senegal. It also includes like recorded like archives of these endangered flora species. And then it tries to guess the ones that we never took a picture of before they went extinct. So that's one of the things that AI does well. Like it's like we could use it as a time machine. We could use it to tell the future, but it's probably terrible at that. But it's probably very good at being a time machine if you have a specific enough like model and the data is like kind of narrow enough, right? And so I was able to sort of take educated guesses at what these flowers might have looked like. And over time, I've realized that like just speculative archives are potentially one of the only means for me to see some things about where I'm from, just because of how patchy the collection data has been about certain places in the world.
Thank you so much, Linda. We have two questions in the chat. One of them is kind of more straightforward, so I'll give you both of them. The first one is from Flower, and they're asking, do you also relate the trust people have in AI to your own work? If so, how? And that they really loved your work and found it really interesting.
Oh, thank you. So can you repeat the question?
Do you also relate the trust people have in AI to your work? So maybe that's, yeah.
That's an interesting one. I try to show as many different kinds of models. I mean, a lot of like I critique AI with my work. Literally, like everything I produce is a critique of the existing model and how it works, right? And so I think, if anything, that I've seen, my work tends to make people critical about AI, which is the right place to be. Because it's one of the things that I don't like doing, especially with this, whether I'm talking about flowers or cities or objects, is to pretend that there is anything but a myth happening on as you're looking at an image. Like this is a myth. This is a story that I'm telling, and I'm using a computer to tell the story. And the flaws in the story are what's interesting about the story. What's missing in the images you're seeing is what needs questioning and what leads you to question more. So I have a high mistrust for AI, which I think is a healthy thing to do right now, because of the way the technology is being developed. And I hope that people who look at my work actually develop a bit more of that. Yeah.
Thank you. And the other question, which I said is maybe straightforward, but actually I'm not totally sure. But a user named BitBob was asking, what software do you use to create your own AI data models?
Good question. So GANs, I'm a big GANs girl. Just they provide the most flexibility in training. And because you can work with like very high scale, like up until recently, the context window for like basically commercial models were like really limited. And so if you wanted to train with a lot of data, you had to kind of go that route. Recently, the context windows are getting a bit larger. Obviously, you're working with a much more generalized model, so you have a little bit less control. But I've also been experimenting with LoRa's. I like them a lot less. I think that what I'm trying to sort of get around, unless I'm actually trying to make a point about it, are the biases for places or people that look like me. And so what I find is that a lot of, diffusion models tend to have a very strong leaning on those biases. Like it will give you faces, it will give you a very specific kind of braid. It always tends to look a very, it has its own perspective, right? And it's really hard. It's really, really difficult to crack that. And when I talk about brute forcing, I'm literally erasing a lot of that. So a lot of the images that you'll see that I make, one of the ways you can see which models that I use, if I'm using a diffusion model, the image is always blurry, or there's parts of the image that are always blurry because I purposely will erase some things. But if the image is a little bit crispier and more feels more complete, then it's probably made with my own model that I trained.
Thank you so much, Linda, and thank you for sharing your work with us. Lillian's also sharing some links to your work in the chat, so people can also follow you and get in touch. But we really appreciate having you here with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so we have come to the end of our fourth and sadly our final Photography Is event. This was such a nice series to develop together. So thank you, all of you, for joining us for this last one. I also want to thank all of our great speakers, Sylvia, Francesco, Jason, Sarah, and Linda, for being with us tonight, and also taking on this challenge of sharing your work in such a fast-paced format.
We also want to thank Cultuurloket Digital for making this series, this whole event series possible. And of course, big thanks to all of you joining. This last event of the series also marks my final moments in the position of digital curator at Foam. So I want to take this small moment to express my gratitude to all of you who followed along and supported throughout this whole series, all the artists, the team at Foam, but especially Margarita and Lilian and the team at the HUM for a wonderful collaboration and a great series.
Thank you so much, Rinka. It was really a joy to work together. And with the HUM, we're also going to continue our collaboration with Foam. And we're actually creating a new work, which is going to use interactive mapping techniques to explore gender expression online. The work is going to open at Foam on January 23rd for those of you who are in Amsterdam or the Netherlands, but it's also going to be available online for everyone to play and interact with. And we're going to have 5 guest curators who are also going to curate their own maps of gender expression online. And Sarah, who is here with us tonight, will also be one of those guest curators. So that's also really exciting. Before we wrap up for the evening, we want to invite you to join us on our Miro board and share your answer to this question that we were posing, photography is ... On the board, we've also put together some articles and research that we used to prepare for this event. So feel free to add your own thoughts and takeaways from the discussions that we've had together tonight. So we'd love to hear from you. You can hop on over when the stream is closing off, and Lillian's going to share the links for that in the chat. So let's continue the conversation there. Have a wonderful evening, and hope to see you soon at another HUM event, or perhaps at the opening at Foam. Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye.